No, I know you're on.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks for asking. Whoever just asked. I'm really excited about today's Lunchtime Leadership series. We're actually doing a panel, as you can see, and the topic is, Are You My Mentor? Just like last week, I'm going to go over a couple of housekeeping. You have evaluations on your chairs. We have CLCE reward cards for attending the LLS. So once you turn in your evaluation at the end of the session, we'll go ahead and print your cards. At the end, when you receive the full card, we'll give you a special promo item, and they're really cool. They're water bottles. Another thing I want to note is that on the desk right outside, there are flyers of our upcoming events. There are some really great things going on in CLCE that we want everybody to be aware of. So please just take a look at them and grab whatever you'd like. Bring them to your organization, to your classes. I would really appreciate that. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Nico. He's our student assistant. He's actually going to be facilitating the panelists' questions, and then our panelists will introduce themselves.
Hi guys, I'm Nico. I'm the Leadership Development Student Assistant here in the CLCE. I work under Chloe and Cord. I don't know if you guys know them, but they're right over there. So, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
My name is Michelle Turman, and I am the president of Catalyst Consulting Services. And so we basically work with nonprofits in Tampa Bay and beyond with executive searches, strategic planning, organizational assessments, and executive coaching. I'm a fellow Bull. I graduated with my graduate degree in 2000. So it's great to be back and be here. I'm also a member of our program of Women Leadership and Philanthropy. So we actually raise quite a bit of money for scholarships on campus. We have a 99% graduation rate. So any of you young women who have not looked at our program, I encourage you to do so, so that we can support you. It's great to be here today.
My name is Angela Pottinger, and I am with the Lions Eye Institute for Transplant and Research, and I run their foundation, and we really provide corneas for people who cannot afford it. And we also work with children who are blind or visually impaired, and we support research efforts for finding a cure to blindness.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Griffin. I am a partner at the Dean Mead Law Firm. And I am not a fellow Bull, but I will tell you my husband is. He's a two-term student body president from here and has worked a lot with CLC. I see some of you shaking your heads. You may have seen him before on some panels. And so I graduated with a finance MBA and JD all from Florida State. So we had a little rivalry this past Saturday. But I will tell you that I proudly wore gold. Get it, like garnet and gold, green and gold. I thought I couldn't go wrong. So even though I am a Seminole by degree, I definitely have the Bulls in my heart. And I'm here for every home football game, hosting a big tailgate with Mike. And so absolutely love the university. I'm very pleased to be here with you all today.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Haddad Palermo. I'm originally from the Panhandle. I went to Florida State for both undergrad and my law degree. I actually am an associate at Burns-Gorman here in Tampa. I do general commercial litigation, so if anybody has any questions about the law, you can see me afterward. Although I'm not a Bull, I'm really excited to be here, and you guys have absolutely amazing facilities. I will tell you, this absolutely wipes the floor with FSU Student Union, so yeah, but thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, to start off the discussion, the first question I'd like to ask you guys is, what is the best and worst decision you've ever made in your respective organizations? Sure.
Oh.
Anyone can go in.
So I would say the best decision I ever made was starting my own company a few years ago. I had been working with nonprofits in the CEO or COO capacity, and decided and had the courage to start my own company, and that was probably the best decision. So now I can work with a lot of different organizations and help them accomplish their mission. I would say the worst decision was not doing it sooner and not going with my gut and having the belief in myself that I could do it, or not knowing that I had the sphere of influence to do that and start my own business.
I would say, for me, the best is to really invest in the people that you work with. I think it's really important for them to have the opportunity for personal and professional development. So I think it's really encouraging them to be the best they can be, and it only helps you in the long run. And I think I really don't have a worst. I think everything that happens, good or bad, is an opportunity to learn. So I really take what has happened in the past and I learn from it, and it's an opportunity to grow and become a better person.
My best from a leadership perspective is to look at every day as a blessing. You guys are all here because you're probably involved on campus and in various organizations, and I'm sure it gets stressful at times, especially, if you have exams and your family's calling and you want to get home for Thanksgiving, etc. And so one of my mentors called me one day and said, isn't today such a blessing? And I was particularly stressed that day, but it changed the last 3 years of my life since I got that phone call, because when I start to get stressed now, I think to myself, I have the opportunity to work on these things, and it really makes me happy as opposed to looking at things as a stressor. So you have the opportunity to lead your organizations and to do well in school, and for your family to love you and call you, and so even though this can be stressful, if you kind of turn around your thinking, it's a true blessing. My worst leadership mistake was looking at things individualistically and taking individual credit as opposed to on behalf of an organization. And so, for instance, yesterday I was presenting on behalf of a local voluntary organization, and when I was writing my remarks, I went back through and redid them as if they were presented on behalf of the organization. For instance, we had thank you gifts, and when I had originally written my remarks, they accidentally, because I'm still training myself, still learning, like you said, it's a process, but it says, I wanted to thank you, and I went back and I rewrote it. The organization wants to thank you for being here. So I think a good leader looks at things from the organization and promotes the organization, not yourself.
For me, I'm still very young. Just started my 4th year as an attorney, and I knew right off the bat I wanted to get really involved with leadership. And Melanie had a really big role in that, actually, because she had kind of been fostering our relationship when I was still in law school, and when I got to Tampa, we met and started talking about what I was going to do. I think when you know you want to be involved, but you still want to have a career, for me, the best decision I made was when I was applying for different law positions. It was finding the right fit. So it was finding employers who I knew valued the leadership aspect and valued your involvement. There are a lot of careers you could find yourself in where they just want you to work really hard in your desk and they don't want you to ever leave, and they don't care if you're involved in the community. And for me, it was finding that atmosphere where they really valued the fact that I wanted to get involved in an area I wasn't from and help the community. So for me, that was the best decision I made. And obviously seeking out amazing mentors who can point you in the right direction. I think one of the worst decisions in leadership, let's see, this is really hard. And I had an answer, what was it? I know. Okay, so I know what I was gonna say, and it kind of goes along with what Melanie was saying before, is that no matter what happens in your life, where you go to work, it's being really grateful, because I got to a point in about my 3rd year where I was getting a little burnout, and I had so many involvement activities, and I still had my billable hour requirement. I was getting married, and I was thinking, gosh, this is just too much. Like, maybe I need to make a change. And my mom sat me down and said, you need to be so grateful for what you have. You have an education. You have a great employers. You work at a wonderful firm that invests so much time in you, and they appreciate you. And she said, you need to embrace the suck. And I said, okay, Mom, thanks a lot. And I thought about it, and she was so right. I mean, I have a friend who even said, we may work a lot, but we sit in an air-conditioned office. We're not laying bricks. We're not in the heat and in the sun, and that's an amazing, whatever you do is great, but you're all getting an education. And so being really grateful for where you are and the opportunities you do have, I think is what you need to remember no matter where you go, and being thankful for everyone who's helped you get where you are.
Thank you, guys. That was pretty insightful. What do you think is the most significant barrier to female leadership, maybe for you guys individually, and as well as like the future generation, maybe some people in this room?
You want to get it?
I could start.
Okay. So this is a really hard question, because we talk about this in the law all the time. And the Florida Bar Board of Governors for Young Lawyers actually has a committee starting up trying to figure out how to help women, because we have more women going into law school, but then when you get to the partnership track, there are a lot fewer women. So it's what's happening in that division and that divide that women aren't getting to the leadership roles. And I was thinking about it in the car on the way here, and it's such a hard, because is it women decide I want to have children and I don't know if I can balance it all? Are they in an environment where it's not conducive to balancing it all? Are they just making the decision I don't want to do it? I'm not really sure. I think it depends on where you go. And for me, it's the same answer. It's find the right environment for you. Find a career and employers who support you if you do want to do both. And I think the other thing is not judging. If a woman wants to stay home and take care of her children, that's wonderful. And if she wants to pursue her career and have children or not have children, I think it's lacking that judgment that we've had in the past, because there was that division of, in the past, women stayed home. But then there was this new era of women who wanted to have it all or didn't want to have kids. So I think it's putting the judgment aside and letting every woman do what's right for her. And the most important thing is, if you have succeeded to a certain position, is helping people behind you. And I think there's a mentality of women who get to the top who might not, they maybe think, I did it alone, you know, why can't she do it? And it's really helping other women get there. And I'm not trying to just like toot Mel's horn, but this is a prime example of someone who does that. I mean, she works her booty off and does so many different things, and I'm only one of many mentees she has in the community. So just never forgetting that. It's that, yeah, you're getting to a position, but you need to help others too, and kind of pay it forward.
How many, just so I can get a sense of it, how many of you are seniors? Any of you? Okay, so a few seniors and are looking for jobs. My number one answer to this question is communication. And this is applicable for guys and for girls. So I have a girlfriend, and she owns her own business, and she has several interns. She's loaded with work, which is a good problem to have in business, right? You want to have too much work, so you're hiring other people. And she had a male intern and a female intern. And she went to, and so it's getting to be the end of the summer or the end of the internship, and she wants to hire both of them. But she doesn't exactly say that. And so the man specifically goes up to her and says, Ms. Alex, I want to work for you doing what you do. And so that was great. She said, great, awesome, I want you to come work here. The girl she equally liked, had equally good work product, but the girl tap danced around it and kind of said, Ms. Alex, I really like, I like your field. Do you know of anybody hiring? Yada, yada, yada. And so Miss Alex was like, well, do you want to work for me or not? Like, the girl would never actually say, I want to work for you. And so finally, so she had to coax her into that, to finally say, I want to work for you. So the second thing that happens is that Miss Alex, again, I'm using up the name, but says, okay, here's your salary. I'm going to offer you $25,000 a year, $100,000 a year, whatever it is to work there. The man looks at Miss Alex and says, actually, I don't want to be paid $100, I'd like to be paid $125. And so he negotiated his salary. Men tend to negotiate their salaries, and that's part of the thing that you'll see, that women get paid, I think it's 8/10 on the dollar, my math isn't good there, whatever that is, a quarter, we get paid a quarter less. So the woman accepted the offer. So the man made more, and not because Miss Alex is a woman owner of this business, not because Miss Alex wanted to have pay disparity, but the woman never asked to be paid more. And so my husband always, he helps me with this a lot. He always says to me whenever we're talking about issues, he'll say, Mel, tell them what you want. If you haven't told someone what you want, whether it comes to a leadership position or in your personal relationships, your friendships, whatever it is, people are not mind readers. And so if you're not upfront, and as a woman, we tend to tap dance, we want everybody to be happy and like us. And certainly there's a respectful way you can say it. You don't want to look rude or ungrateful. I think Alex had a great message about being grateful. But it's also okay to tell people what you want and to negotiate. And I think that until we learn to do that as women, that is going to be a barrier for us in the workplace.
I agree. And I also think, good, bad, or indifferent, that social or gender bias is still out there. We are trying really, really hard to overcome that. And unfortunately, there are still a lot of people who come from a generation before us who still believe that. So it really is just getting in there, doing your job, doing it well, and making yourself proud. And I think your work and your work ethic will speak for itself. And as you guys come into the workforce, we are more global than ever before. And not only do you have to deal with what's going on here in the United States, but then you have also the opinions and stereotypes that exist in other countries around the world. So I think that might be a challenge, because there are some cultures out there who really don't put women first, or who think that women have a place in the workplace. So I think that's going to be a challenge as you guys come into the workforce.
I would say the most significant barrier, quite frankly, is you have a lot of women who don't help other women, I'll be quite honest. You're starting to see that change, but you still see women that are not either serving as a mentor capacity, they're really not helping groom other women. And that's just a reality that I think does need to change, where I think prior, what we found was lack of opportunity. There's still lack of opportunity, but fortunately that has been changing with leaders in our community, women here today, women in this room. So that is shifting, but I will be honest with you and tell you that when I speak to other women, they say, somebody hasn't really helped me, or I've put out an olive branch to this person to see if they can help me. Now, accessibility is always going to be an issue. You might not find somebody that aligns with your professional goals, but I think the reality is sometimes you just don't have that person that you're working and aligned with, and just be prepared for that. Hopefully that will change as we get more women in leadership positions, and just as Alex alluded to, that they really need to be helping people up. So kind of remember that as you go through life. You'll probably meet a lot of people that are not willing to maybe help right now. How are you going to change? How are you going to be different when somebody comes to you to ask for help?
Just to remind you guys, you're free to ask questions at any point. It's an open panel.
Kids are ready.
So you mentioned you pursued an MBA as well as a law degree. How did you stay organized, and how were you able to balance your professional life as well as your academic work?
How did I stay organized? Wow. So hopefully all of you are electronic, because I feel old now, but I still have my paper Bible. Do most of you, are you electronic 100%, or are some of you still using paper? You're using paper?
Yeah.
Okay, my number one tip, do not use paper. And now I feel cool, now I'm the cool old lady. So one of the things I did to get more organized, what I realized was I was spending a lot of time, it feels good to cross off your to-do list, right? It feels just as good to backspace and delete. And so what I promise you. And so what I was doing, I was spending a lot of time rewriting, reorganizing, I didn't get this done today, so I'm gonna do it tomorrow. And so when I went electronic, I now have everything, my task list, my calendar reminders, everything is electronic. There's so many tools that are available to you these days. And so, and I wish I had it. Jessica Muroff, who we've got to get in here, Ashley, I don't know if she already left, but she's actually, unfortunately, your last female student body president, and she was elected almost 2 decades ago. So women in the room, you all need to change that from an organizational perspective here on campus. But back to the point is that she gives a fabulous presentation about all the different electronic tools that are available to you. And so if there's any type of CLE or course like this that's available, I highly encourage you to go. It's fascinating. Things that will sort your email for you, put it in the right folders. You get something from this professor, it goes in that that folder. Something from this organization goes in that folder. It puts a calendar reminder. It starts to get to know your personality. I don't know if you guys have heard of this app. There's something that, again, being organized, it will know that you need to do something and that you're getting close to Publix or your desired place, and it will actually send you a reminder as you approach that destination. So my point is, think about technology and how it can make your life better, because there are a lot of ways to get organized. The other thing, and I'm sure these ladies have fabulous ideas as well about time management, I realized that I was putting way too much on my list, and that I therefore felt like a failure every day. And so I would put 30 things on my list, I'd accomplish 5, and I would really focus on 25. So first of all, you gotta get that out of your head, your success every day that you just, you're here, right? But beyond that, you've got to get realistic about your time. And so when I am looking to make a hire, Alex and I were just talking about this before, I consider how people perform extracurricularly to be how they will perform in a professional setting. So all of us were here on time. I assume that if I hired Michelle, she would be on time for work. I don't need to work with her to know that. She was on time for this panel. And so, how you are presenting in your organizations and how you're doing your homework and presenting to your classes are how people are going to think of you in the future when you're building your business or looking for a job. Anyway, so I would get serious about, how much time do you think things are going to take? Really plug them in, have a game plan. I look at every single month. This is my last tip, and I promise I'll quit my monologue. But I'm really realistic with myself about, I don't expect that I can work 5 work days a week because, for instance, I'm here today. And so this takes away time from my work day, just like it's taking away time for your school day. So on Monday, I blocked out, I have no extracurricular activities on Monday so that I can really concentrate on my substantive work and get back to my clients. And so, because you can't junk up your calendar, so you have to have a game plan for how are you going to get your work done, be realistic about how much it takes and plug it in. And I'd love to hear, I need to learn from you guys what my fellow panelists say.
Well, I have 2 boys, so kids will always do that to you. So I would hear exactly what you had said in terms of electronics. I remember back in the day when my husband and I used to use Palm Pilots, if anybody remembers what that is, and we'd have to sit and sync our schedules. So that's been a godsend, even now with my oldest who can text me. You know, I know what's going on. I'm plugged in what they're doing. I can track what they're doing, which is even better. They don't know that yet. So it's really incredible what you can do with technology. And I think in terms of priorities, kids definitely put that in there for you. So having your own business has really taught me a lot about managing priorities, where my clients are, volunteering. I mean, this is something I'm passionate about, is talking to people about mentoring or talking about how you can become leaders. But family is equally important, and you have to learn how to balance that. And you're only one person. So I find now I'm working with my 2 young boys to do those same things, because I know that time management will carry them even now in 3rd and grade and middle school. It's going to carry them even now as professionals. So I tell them all the time, what are your priorities? Did you write them down? What's the first thing you need to do? And then you can have free time. It doesn't really change, the older you get. So that's pretty much how I manage it, is that I know what my priorities are. I think that as long as you know what those priorities are, because if not, then your health will suffer. You're no good to anybody. But technology definitely helps keeping those priorities in line.
If I can tack on one thing very quickly on priorities, I thought this was such an interesting comment that I heard from someone recently. Don't make other people's priorities your priorities. That doesn't mean you shouldn't consider other people and be an empathetic person. But I think one of the things that if you're not already struggling with it, you are going to struggle with, for all you seniors next year as a professional, is the amount of communications that you receive and the different mediums in which you receive them. You're going to get LinkedIn requests, you're going to get Facebook messages, you're going to get text messages, you're going to get emails, letters, and phone calls. You're going to be communicating on at least 6 platforms. I have clients who use all those platforms. I'm sure you all do too. And so you're constantly trying to check in on them. So, but point being is that, and this goes back to prioritizing your day, and it comes up with student organizations, right, as well. So someone has an emergency. So you were good, you took our advice, and you pared down your 30 things, you made it 5, I can realistically accomplish 5, but now people start contacting you, today this happened in our organization, or, you get flooded with emails, that kind of thing. You need to develop a plan as well for how you're going to stay on track with what you wanted to accomplish today, and not let all of the distractions get in your way. And so whether it's a polite phrase, respectfully, today I plan to do my homework, but I would be happy to speak with you about this emergency, assuming it could wait tomorrow. I have a 15-minute block, how does that work for you? But that's something else you should have a phrase. You don't always need to be accessible. You don't always need to have, you need to have a game plan. You certainly want to close your door to everybody, but it doesn't mean you have to also deal with it right then. So you should have a game plan for that.
Absolutely. There aren't a whole lot of dudes in this room, but I do have a question that is applicable to men. How are women's issues in the workplace also men's issues?
Oh, they're so important. I mean, all my mentors were men until I decided to have my own company, I'll be honest with you, because what I did for a living at that time, that's who was running the companies. There were like 3 high-profile females in the area. It was Pam Ario, Rhea Law, and Betty Castor. That was it. So that's changing. So they were always men. So everything that I really learned, quite frankly, was through male mentors, and now I'm raising 2 young men. And so the reality is, what I try to teach them is, you will have a female boss. I do believe you'll have a female president. And you'll also have a partner in this life, and you'll have people that work with you. So it's really important to understand what each person can bring to the table, whether it's a male or a female. I think it's equally important because the dynamic is shifting. And even in a mentorship capacity, it doesn't always need to be, us mentoring just young individuals. It's also, we have reverse mentoring these days, where you have older generations working with younger generations to stay relevant. But you also have men that are asking to be mentored by women and vice versa. So I think each person has something to bring to the table. It might be different skills, but is equally relevant.
And I agree, and I think, regardless of gender, everyone has something different to bring to the table. And I think women in leaders, what Alex said earlier, is that, you're attracting better talent if you are open and men are open to bringing women into the fold and getting a different perspective. You are attracting better talent, and that only is going to help your company in the long run. So I think it's really, really important for them to look for strong women who are out there who can bring something to the table, who have a voice, who are willing to manage up, and who are willing to bring people into the fold that are good for the organization.
Gender bias works both ways. I didn't know that before I went into the workplace, but not only is there bias against women, there's bias against men. And so I've had clients who specifically have wanted to work with women, and I've had clients who have wanted to work with men, and I respect their decision. I mean, they're paying the bills, so whoever they want to work with in our organization, we pair them with, and some people just flat out feel comfortable. I mean, if some of you go to the doctor, maybe you have, or you want a massage therapist or whatever, I mean, we have all kinds of reasons we may want to see a male or a female in different industries and professions. And so I think you have to kind of roll with the punches and recognize that sometimes people, like I said, whether it's a comfort level, I've also heard, and not only in terms of gender bias, but diversity. As you're making hiring decisions, people more in this global workplace, they want to work with businesses that quote unquote look like them and have a diverse representation. And so you have to think about that when you're hiring. You can't have, all black males or all white females or whatever. People want to work with a diverse population. That's a great thing that we're a global melting pot. But that also means that men and women are going to have to work together if your organization is going to have the best chance of succeeding.
I really do agree with everything that's been said. Mel kind of hit the nail where I was going to speak about is in this day and age when a business is trying to build and attract the new talent, like Angela said, they are being looked at by clients and potential referrals as, well, do you reflect our society today? Or are you a bunch of old white males, which is kind of historically what people think a law firm is. And so what's happening is these firms have to go with the flow. They have to meet society's demands, and that means bringing in all the talent. So that's not just the old white men. And their issue is if you're in the leadership of that law firm and you're hiring these people, but you're not fostering them and developing them and supporting them, and then they're leaving, I mean, that doesn't say much about your own leadership skills. So I think it's up to those men to do that, but it's not just men. I think our law firm has a women's steering committee, and it's gone back and forth on whether or not that's beneficial in the long run anyway, because do we want to segregate ourselves as women, or do we want to make sure we're just work hard, just do a good job and be part of the group, and everyone will see your value? So I kind of go back and forth on that, but I think as a male who has a wife and who has daughters probably who are going to want to be in the workforce at some point, men do need to see that fostering diversity and women in general is going to benefit their business and show their own leadership skills in the long run.
Great points. You just actually hit on what I was about to ask, which is what's the best way to foster, like you said, a mentor relationship, both for the mentor and for the student?
So that's interesting because I remember hearing somebody once say, don't go up to somebody and be like, will you be my mentor? Because it's not organic. But if you find somebody, if you see someone that you've met in some situation, you really respect them and you admire them and you think, wow, that person really has got it going on, it's kind of what I would like to be like Melanie. Ask them to lunch. Don't be like, can you be my mentor, please? But ask them to lunch and say, how did you get where you are? And do you have advice for me? And I remember I was in a leadership organization at FSU, and Mel used to call me and be like, you're doing such a great job. I'm so proud of you. I had never met her before. And that's just something, that's what a great mentor she is. She invests in other people. And I think it's really easy, men and women, to get really wrapped up in your own career or your own education and not think of others. And Melanie is a great example of someone who wants to help other people do well and succeed. So she was always checking in on me, saying, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help? When you get to Tampa, give me a call. And then we finally met for the first time. And she's been a huge role in where I've gone and what I've done in leadership and at work. And I think that's kind of how it is just maybe if you do find someone that you think they'd be someone you could really learn from, ask them to sit down with you at lunch. Be on time. So it's really easy in college. I mean, you have classes at random times. Your schedule's not the same every day. So you haven't learned yet what it's going to be like in a couple of years. But my best advice was if you're not 15 minutes early to everything, you're late. So try and live by that. If you're meeting somebody for something, be 15 minutes early. If you're saying you're going to do something, do it. Melanie asked me to do this a couple weeks ago, and then I got called to do a client trip, and I got in at 5 this morning. And there was no way I was gonna cancel this because Melanie had asked me to do it. So make your commitments, do them, and I think all of those are, and start responding to emails now within 24 hours. Because like Melanie said, you're gonna have so many different forms of communication, it is really hard. But I think that will benefit you in your professional life if you make sure you communicate very quickly, you respond quickly to emails, and you're always very professional.
You have a great point. The number one way that I have seen a mentoring relationship go wrong, how many of you have a mentor? I think you have a mentor. Okay, so a few of you. The rest of you have got to work on that. You don't need 1 minute, 10 by the way.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of work ahead of you. But the number one thing that I oftentimes hear is I haven't heard from my mentor. We haven't talked in a long time. And I think that you have to, from the outset, either be in the mindset that you need to reach out to your mentor if you need something, you need to put it on their radar, and or you need to talk about it with that person from the outset. So for instance, I had a mentee one time who said to me, "May I contact you every 2 weeks?" And I said, sure. I said, with the understanding that I may not be able to always respond to you if we're going to communicate that frequently. But if you're okay with the fact that I may not get back to you all the time, then yes. And of course, if it was an emergency, I would. And so a couple of thoughts on that. So what she would do, and it wasn't always every 2 weeks, but she was so effective, and she would find a little tidbit. So for instance, if I'm Nico and I'm your mentor, and you want to check in with me, what I might say is, "Hey Mel, I just wanted to let you know I moderated a very successful panel with these great women, and SCLE or whatever your acronym is, it's going very well for me. I'm really showing my leadership strengths. How are things going for you?" And so what would happen is she would inevitably, or just like Alex she'd check in with me and say, "Hey, I have a question about this." So they constantly have stayed on my radar, and so I have helped Alex and I helped this other mentee a lot more than I helped a lot of other mentees, and not because I didn't like those other people, but I never heard from them. And so if I'm really busy managing my organization, my business, even though I'm very well intentioned and I enjoy mentoring, if I'm trying to think about, have I responded to all my clients, have I checked everything off, did I feed my husband today, all these things, seriously, he doesn't yet, right? And so the last thing I'm thinking is, oh, and did I remember to make sure that my mentee has a job and they got to class and did their homework? I mean, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't make the cut, right? It wasn't in the top 5 of those 30 things I had to do today. But if someone gets back to me and they're staying on my radar and they're checking in every once in a while, then what would happen is these people would naturally, like Alex, I asked to join a board that I was on. And it's been a great leadership opportunity for her. So it's just something where I would naturally think, oh, she'd be a great fit. She would come to mind for things. So I think you have to stay on that radar. And the other thing is that if you do need something, if someone tells me they need something in 20 minutes, and if I can physically make it happen, I will. But you have to say it and put it somehow like in the subject line and be well-intentioned. What will happen is, and Angela and Michelle, I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen, but you'll have a mentee maybe who wants advice about a cover letter or a resume, or they have a question about interviews, and they never tell you the interview is tomorrow. And so you get back to them in 48 hours, and they're like, oh, I already, it sucked because I wasn't prepared, you didn't call me. Well, they never told me they needed an answer. They had said, I need an I advise you, get to them sooner than that. But if you do need something on an emergency basis, it happens to all of us, then at least clearly communicate that so your mentor can help you out. So you have to be clear, I think, not only about, so to recap, because I kind of went on there. So number 1, I think you need to set it out from the outset. When are you going to communicate with your mentor? 2, I think as the mentee, you need to follow up and say what it is you want. And 3, I think you need to be clear with your time expectations as to if you do need help by a certain date, to clearly communicate that to your mentor so that they can get back to you and put it in their priorities. Or if they can't get back to you, let you know so you can go to career services or you can go to another mentor to get the help you're desiring.
I mean, I think you hit on a great point. As a mentee, I think that it's really important for you to be respectful of your mentor's time. I mean, again, you are not, the priority, but I think, if you come with a plan and you're prepared and you're always willing to do the work, I think it'll work out really, really well. And I also think you need to be open and willing to listen. Sometimes your mentor is going to say things that you don't want to hear, and you have to be open to that, and you have to see the other perspective because they've been there, they've done that. So really, to be open to their expertise and their knowledge is only going to help you in the long run.
Actually, can I ask you, because I want to hear this, how do you communicate, how have you had mentees effectively communicate to you that they're open to that? Because that's something I struggle with as a mentor, is sometimes I'll think, oh, I really want to tell this person this tidbit, but I don't know how they'll receive it, and it would really help them in their career. So is there anything that as a mentee you might say, or how to let them know that you're open to that criticism?
For me,
Constructive criticism.
I think it's inherent to what the whole relationship is. I mean, if you are looking for a mentee or a mentor, you are open to whatever you can to gain position in your field or gain knowledge from them. I mean, it's all, for me, it was understood. You know, if I go to Michelle and I say, look, I have this issue, or what, I want your feedback on this, I hope, and I know, and she is, like, she can be brutally honest with you, but I expect that. I mean, and we have that relationship where I'm like, you know, don't sugarcoat anything. I want to know, I want to do this right, I want to be prepared, I want to be successful. So I think that's just an understanding that maybe when you start your relationship, you say, look, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm not saying things, like your mother, I'm not saying things to hurt you, I love you, I want you to succeed, and this is why I'm telling you these things, you know?
If I could jump in really quickly, I think something really important to remember too is, and I learned this coming out of law school at a really tough time when there were no jobs. Seeking a mentor, you should never think of it as finding someone that's going to get you a job.
Right.
And so you're finding a mentor, and I think maybe that's maybe a reason people shy away from being a mentor, because they're scared, oh, this person's going to expect me to find them a job. It can be someone who helps you point you in the right direction, maybe set up meetings with you, but your intent for finding a mentor should be finding someone who can really give you the honest answers, the constructive criticism, that you should be doing this, you're doing this really well, but maybe this could be a bit different, or this is what your profession will look like, do you really want to do it? Those are the things you should really be seeking out in a mentor, and if that relationship does grow organically and that person can find you a job in the long run, that's even better, but that shouldn't really be your first intention, I think, and that's something to really remember.
Did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, it's kind of on topic with all of this, just because you guys have had so much experience with the mentor-mentee situation. What is some of the biggest, how do I word this? What are some of the biggest moments, maybe coming out of like your degrees in like school, when you had trouble like maybe connecting what you learned there to the real world? Like the biggest aha moments, if you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, yeah.
especially because you just graduated like a little bit ago. So it's like, what happened that was so different from being in school and like on this track to this career to maybe where you are and what career you have now?
I have a great example. So, I was an undergrad, I went to Florida State, and I remember sitting in the financial aid office. I had to put myself through school, both of my degrees. And the gentleman at the student loan office said to me, well, what are you planning on doing? And I said, well, I'm an art history major. I plan on running a museum one day. And he said, well, you might want to reconsider your major because you're not going to make a lot of money with that. Now I'm sitting there in Burt Reynolds Hall, and we were a huge football school then, and I thought, well, that's not, But I remember, I'll never forget that, because I sat there for a minute and I went, it's not going to be the first time that anybody either doesn't believe in me, believe in what I enjoy, and believes in the ultimate plan. And I need to really grow a thick skin if my goal, which I knew way back then, was going to be leadership. And so that helped me, and it really fueled me. And I look back on it now and I go, well, I did exactly what I wanted to do. I ended up running a museum. I ended up diving into the Titanic. I ended up doing that and then some, and having incredible experiences, almost out of spite of that. And so what I always tell people, and then when I came here to USF, it's a very small art history college. And I wasn't a modern art person, I was a Renaissance person. And they only accepted me because they had one professor that I could align with. And so I went in there and I loved it, and I chose that over larger schools like Boston University because I knew I would have the flexibility to be able to navigate what I wanted to do. And so I just felt like, and I still feel like sometimes at every turn, I'm still having to prove, or I'm still having to motivate myself. And prove others wrong. And it really, I look back on that moment, and as you move forward, no matter what you do or what your career path is or your personal path, if you don't have that belief in yourself, first and foremost, it's going to be difficult to lead. It will be difficult to assist any mentee or mentor that you have. But that belief in yourself will carry you so much farther in addition to your education. It's huge. And that's something for me that has really carried me in every goal that I've ever set.
Go ahead. Do you want to take this one? But I had trouble connecting what I learned, this may sound silly, that what I actually learned in school, how it actually applied in the workplace. So for instance, so Alex and I are both attorneys, and
Doesn't teach you how to be a lawyer.
and there are rules but there are rules that guide what we're supposed to do. And so inevitably, for the stuff in the first 2 years of my career, I promise you, I would go to the main partner that I was working for, and I would say, how long do we have to do this? And he would say, go look at the civil rules. And I would say, oh, okay. And then I'd ask him, oh, can someone amend their pleading? And he'd say, go look at the civil rules. I mean, that was his answer. It took 2 years, I promise you, before I finally realized that the answer was actually in the book that I had taken a class on, and that was sitting on my bookshelf. And that was the answer, oh, I took a class on this, I learned it, it's right there. I don't know, there was a disconnect for me. I'm a very kinetic learner, and so even though I learned it in the classroom, since I hadn't actually done it, and sometimes you'll hear that lawyers don't always get the training, but even the training we did get, we got that training, and I still, since I hadn't been through it kinetically, was just having trouble connecting the dots of what I'd actually learned in the classroom was actually what I was supposed to be doing in the workforce. I don't know how you get over that other than recognizing it could be a problem and hopefully picking up on it faster than I did. Hopefully it won't take you 2 years of asking the question. And I think that, when we asked the question about who had a mentor, there were only a few of you that raised a hand. I cannot advocate getting a mentor, not only outside of your maybe organization or profession, particularly outside of your organization can be nice because again, I'm asking that question to the main partner I'm looking to, right? So how much confidence was I instilling in him about my abilities? Probably not a lot. It would have been awesome if I had been going to a mentor outside my organization to ask some of those questions, and I could have looked like a hero, I was really, really smart in my job to my boss every day. So I think that, like I said, the mentoring is what I was talking about, couldn't have come faster enough for me. So what was your answer?
That has a lot to do with my answer, and it's not just the law, but when I tell people about going to law school, I'm like, I loved my law school, it was wonderful, but it did not teach me how to be a lawyer. Your first couple of years, you're just you get comfortable with the feeling of not knowing what you're doing. That's just how it gets a little bit better. But you're always having to consult the books because you don't know what you're doing. My boss jokes with our first year, he's like, you didn't commit malpractice today, did you? And that's why it's so important to have supervisors and mentors, is so that you're not committing malpractice. But I think it's like that in every profession because I have friends who I graduated from college and they would have had a degree, I majored in English and communication. And I have friends who graduated the same degrees and have jobs I had never heard of before. I'm like, how did you find that? And it's so many different ways, but a lot of times it's just they heard about it from a mentor or a friend or someone that they knew. So my best advice is you may end up in a job you've never even heard of at this point. So stay involved with this center. I think this is fantastic. Keep going to people in your career placement office and take personality tests. Because that's one of the best indicators of what field you should be in. And so if they offer them here, which I would imagine they do, I would highly recommend taking them and finding a mentor who can help you when you navigate into whatever field you end up in. I think there were a couple questions.
My question is for you two. Alex, you were saying that you had Miss Mel as your mentor, but you've never met her before. So how did she end up becoming your mentor if you've never actually met?
So we were both in a leadership in it was like a group at FSU. It was called Burning Spear, and so she was in it when she was in law school, and she stayed involved. I think we stayed involved because Patrick was deployed at that time, right?
Yeah, one of my best friends was deployed. Yeah.
And so she was kind of on. I got in a little bit of trouble because I had missed a couple of meetings because of law school. It didn't coincide with a lot of the undergraduate schedules. So a lot of the alums will get you on the phone and say, "What's going on, Alex?" or "Is everything okay?" Can you stay involved with the leadership in this organization?
And this is your, I think, Order of the Golden Brahmin. I'm not sure how many of you are part of that. This would be the equivalent. Is that right?
Heard of it, but
What is it
I
called?
didn't hear it.
I did it, that's what it's
Am I right?
called.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know it's new. I think it's only like 3 years old. I think he's only had a few classes in it, but just pretty new.
So, but I remember being on the phone thinking, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. This is awful. And I remember Mala was like the nicest person ever. She was like, is everything okay? Are you overwhelmed? Like, how can we help you? And make sure that you're still putting in 100% to your schoolwork, but you're also putting into this organization. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. This person's awesome. And, but I never met her. And she kind of just kept up. If I, we won SBA of the year, and I remember I got a letter from Mal. She's really, really good at stationery, which I think is a lost art. If you watch Modern Family, Sofia Vergara's son is like, oh, penmanship is a lost art, and it really is. But she always writes like a congratulations. It was so exciting seeing you in the alumni magazine. Keep it up. If there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. So it's things like that that mean so much into this day and age where no one writes letters anymore. And so we just kind of kept in touch. And when I got to when I got to Tampa, when I moved there permanently, she said, hey, you want to meet up with me and my husband for a drink? Let's go talk. And that was when she actually offered me, she put a big leap of faith in me. She offered me a role on the board when she was president of the Young Lawyers Division Board of Governors for the Florida Bar. And it really was an amazing experience and has led to a lot of other great opportunities for me. And it was, I think the best part was serving under her when she was president. So she's obviously very unique in that she really, she says that you should keep in touch with her, but she does a lot of that. And so it's for me saying, make sure you're keeping in touch with people that you want to help and that people that could help you. And even if it's a simple like, hey, saw you in the newspaper, or how are you doing? Just something little like that, just to keep on their radar, like Melanie said. But we had never met before until I got to Tampa, but she was always someone that I kind of looked to for guidance.
Well, and most of your, and I don't know which department it is at USF, but I can promise you, actually I do know this, you guys talked to Bill over the Alumni Center. I bet your Alumni Center has a list of alumni, and it may not be at the Alumni Center, it may actually be in your college. So like for instance, the College of Law at Florida State has an alumni directory. So you can go on and sort and see that Melanie Griffin practices in Tampa. I would assume your College of Business, your College of Medicine, your College of wherever has a similar directory. And so I'll oftentimes get emails from students that, to your point, I have not met, and that will say, I'm a current student, I'm getting ready to graduate, would you be okay if I give you a call, or would you be willing to review my resume, or give me some ideas about what's going on in the field, like let's say you're coming to school here in Tampa, but you want to go home to Miami or wherever, look for alumni in that geographic area. And the way that I kind of look at the world, and I don't know if these figures are right, I would say about 1/3 of people are jerks. I mean, they're just not going to get back to you. And so don't get discouraged and think that no one wants to be your mentor. Just decide that they are in the 1/3 of jerks and move on. That's okay.
You don't want that person.
You don't want that person. Yeah, it's like you don't want to marry everybody. That's okay. You don't want everybody to be your mentor, right? Okay, so then just look for someone who's in the 2/3. So move on. And so what you may even want to do, again, this goes back to having 10 mentors. You may want to look at that alumni directory. Now, don't send a mass email. You want to make it look individualistic, but you can go ahead and use the same email and just make sure you change out the name though first.
Yeah,
before you send it, change out the name. But you can send a couple different emails, and so that way you'll either ensure that you get a response from at least one of them, and or you may get a couple different perspectives. I think one of the things that is difficult in many industries, and what I tell my mentees is that I may tell you one thing and Alex may tell you something else, and so it's up to you to decide what is the gray in the middle that works for you. But absolutely, don't be afraid to reach out to people you've never met. Last thought, and I've really tried to eliminate from my vocabulary, I just went back to an earlier comment, but I have a business coach who taught me not to use the word I. And so when in writing, I try not to use it. I'll go back and, like I said earlier, rephrase things. And so if you reach out to someone, let's say you see Angela is throwing a big gala at the end of next month for her organization. And so you might see it advertised, like a save the date, and that's something you're interested in doing as well. People love to hear about themselves, right? So to Alex's point, to kind of marry those two ideas, you reach out to Angela, you say in the newspaper, dear Angela, how fabulous that you are throwing this event. Notice I didn't say, I think it's awesome you're throwing this event. Mm-hmm. How amazing that you are throwing this event. could you use my help? Could I come attend? Could I come see what it's like? I mean, people love to hear about themselves. And so if you reach out to someone in that manner, I bet Angela's gonna get back to you and say, well, actually, I love the fact that you think I'm awesome and I'm doing this big event. And she'll get back to you.
Well, thank you guys so much for your insight and your responses. We only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to open the floor to any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, so, within you guys' business and organization, have you ever had an event or a time where you had to make an executive decision, maybe that was kind of not going with the group's decision, but you knew was best for that situation? Has that ever happened, and how was that?
Michelle, you face that.
Oh, yes, I've faced that many times. I faced it as a CEO, I faced it as serving on a board, and running boards. And it's always challenging to go against the grain, but I think that if you have in your mind done your research and been able to explain why you're doing it, or at least suggesting a different tack to do that. I think though another way to go about that would be also, there was a phrase that was said to me by a county commissioner a while ago, and I use it all the time. Know who your votes are before you walk in the room. So, yes, I have a tendency to go against the grain and speak my mind. I'm kind of confident that way, and it's built up over the years. But I've also learned, in my 20s and 30s and now in my 40s, that I know when I walk into a room, and if I'm going to be participating in any types of decisions like that, I've already got my votes. So what you learn the older you get is you also want to be a consensus builder if you want to lead effectively. You can't just lead and say, I'm the boss, this is why you should do it. So whatever that form is, okay, even if it's the employees, if you're on a board, whatever it is you're looking to lead, make sure you have consensus, because if you look behind you and nobody's following you and nobody's supporting you, that's a good indicator you've not built your consensus. So that's something that I would just offer. If you can start doing that, you will be miles away from everybody. It's so hard to do. It was hard to do in my 20s because I was serving on professional boards and trying to get that experience and wanted to lead. And now I find the most powerful people in the room are those who have already got their votes, already built consensus, and surrounding themselves with people that are supporting them.
And very quickly, because this is something I didn't appreciate, and you may agree with this. I thought politics applied to like what's going on TV today, or what on last night and all the commentators talking about. Like, I thought it was more like running for president. Like, that's how I thought about politics. When I was your age, did not appreciate that everything is political. Business, organizations, everything that involves a decision. Like Michelle said, it may not be Democrat or Republican, but if it's going to come down to a vote or a decision that's made in a business. And so now, like Michelle said, what you want to be doing is making sure that, like, if you say, want to start your own business and get a promotion or whatever, you want to be making sure that you're taking out, or to Alex's point, inviting that person to lunch or breakfast, whoever the decision makers are who need to come with you, and having those one-on-one conversations. You don't want to be introducing a new idea or asking for something for the first time in a meeting, whatever form that's in. And I do not appreciate that. And I don't know if you probably found that something as well.
Yeah, it's hard to garner support, and then you're not viewed as a consensus builder, and you're not, quite frankly, viewed as a leader if you are not asking for other people's input, other people's decisions. So it makes it easier. It's not always easy to make difficult decisions. You could be maybe having to separate employment. You may be able, there's a lot of different decisions that you have. You may have to close a business. But at the end of the day, if you've really vetted and you've looked at the different opinions, or you have some support, it does tend to make it a little bit easier, because you are coming outside of yourself to welcome that input.
I think I would add to that, just always trust your instinct. That was what one of my first assistants told me at the beginning of working, and it's always been the absolute biggest thing for me to remember is trust your instinct. My dad has only told this story once, but when he was deployed, he's a military pilot. He was a lieutenant colonel at the time, and he was the pilot, and the plane had a fire on it, and they had a colonel who was just riding on the plane. He wasn't in the squadron, and they had to park the plane somewhere that it wasn't supposed to be. And my dad said, I need my guys to get looked at. They had smoke inhalation, and the colonel that was on the plane at the time, who was higher in rank, said, no, I want us to keep going, get them back, let's go. And my dad defied orders from a higher ranking official and said, no, I want my guys to go get checked out of the hospital. And my dad ended up losing his job because of that. He's now a 2-star general in the military. So, what he thought was the end of his career was just the beginning. But he stuck to his guns, and he didn't do something differently just because he was in a leadership position that someone was trying to tell him was the right thing to do. So I think that's something to always remember, is just because people around you might be saying you need to do something, always trust your own instinct.
See, it goes back to the kids lesson. If everybody jumps off the Brooklyn Bridge, are you going to do it?
Exactly. It's pretty simple.
Are there any other questions?
I had a question. I'm a grad student here at USF teaching. I appreciated, Melanie, that you kept talking about communication in this. I'm teaching a senior capstone communication course surrounding around resumes, cover letters, and finding mentors. So I wanted to be hear all of the different perspectives, which are wonderful. I was curious about LinkedIn as a tool for connecting, making these connections and reaching out. What your perspectives are, or experiences, and what might be the do's and don'ts that you think that I could share with my students?
I will tell you a really nice do that I find is important, because now I'm noticing LinkedIn is probably a lot like Facebook. I have people that ask to accept an invitation. I don't even know who they are, and I won't accept it. I am pretty picky when it comes to contacts, okay, because I am old school. Relationships are everything. They're everything in business. I'm from this area of town. It is everything, and it's quite frankly why I think I'm successful in what I do. But any time that somebody gives me either a recommendation or says, you're good at strategic planning, whatever, I always email them back and make a point to say, thank you so much for the endorsement. And I don't find a lot of people do that. They just accept the endorsement, and I think that's, I don't think that's a good thing. Somebody took the time to do that and they believe in you. So I take that kind of personally. So that's where I think that difference is. I love technology as a tool, but I think it can also enable you to lose that personal touch. And I think what you're hearing up here is mentor relationships, how you move forward professionally, a lot of the friendships that you'll have now, potentially even maybe some of the professors. It really is about relationships, and you never know when you're going to see them again. So definitely take care, even if it is in social media. And just as you've learned, I'm sure, when it comes to communications, or, because I do a lot of hiring and executive searches, sometimes they don't even ever get to meet you. Your first introduction is going to be that cover letter. That first introduction might be through social media, if possible, before you ever get a chance to sit at the table and even open your mouth. So I still think it's very important in written word and how you're presenting yourself, even in social media. I really do.
Does anybody know what LinkedIn does? And that's, no, I mean, and I know what the answer is. I had this conversation with someone the other day. It's like, we're all sending requests and getting requests, going back and forth, but I don't get anything out of it. I honestly, I don't really know anybody who does. I mean, I guess the only thing I can say is that you could search for I don't know, attorney, Tampa, whatever, trying to identify someone. So like I said, it was somewhat a rhetorical question on purpose. I haven't really found LinkedIn to be a useful tool. You haven't. Most people I've met just haven't found it to be it should be a useful tool. It's just not, at least in most industries that I've found so far. But I think what you are hearing, to follow up on what Michelle just said, is the value of connecting one-on-one. So for instance, when I started in a leadership role for the Florida Bar, I went across to all of the universities and law schools and spoke, and I would unabashedly hand out my business card. I must have gone through about 1,000 business cards. How many of you have business cards as a student? Okay, I would say most graduate students will have business cards. And what I would tell you is, if you have a business card and you're not effectively using it, save a tree. Don't even print them. Because what most people do is you'll have people on these panels, or you'll meet someone, you'll give them the card, and you never follow up. So the reason I was able to give out 1,000 business cards to 1,000 students was because maybe 5 of them actually followed up and contacted me. And I know my husband speaks a lot at the university, and I mean, same thing with him. We compare it all the time, so I don't think it's that people don't like me. I think I'm just fine, but I mean, there's none of that follow up. So I think that if you find someone, whether it's going through your alumni database or connecting with the panelists on things like this or whatever, the handwritten note, the phone call, the email, the personal connection, and actually putting time into it is going to be effective. Just sending someone a LinkedIn request, you're going to be off their radar the minute they accept it, if they do.
I would also say, be careful with this on social media. It is out there for everybody to see, and your future employer will have access to it. So you want to be mindful about what you put out there, what you put on social media. You want to present yourself the best possible way that you can. So please be careful about, the drunken night over at, the Ratskeller or whatever. Just be careful what you put out there, because they are looking.
And the other thing on that, because I think that social media is important. I know sometimes career services will tell you not to have a social media account. I actually think it's a very effective way to communicate with people, but to Angela's point, it has to be done intentionally. Here's a way that students don't usually think of it. Students usually think, okay, if I'm not posting about booze, sex, and drugs, I'm good. Also remember that you are your own PR factory. And so even when I'm feeling super stressed inside, I only try to articulate that either at home or to my husband or my mom or whomever. And so what I will also see students do is talk about how stressed they are about their exams, or how late they are in the library, or phew, I just made the deadline and turned in my homework assignment. Man, I barely made that one. And so point being is, what am I thinking? If you're stressed out about studying for that exam, how stressed are you going to be performing as my associate? And so, so you think about it in terms of what you're exuding in terms of professionalism as well. So it's not just the main things you usually think about. It's also the other side of it too.
How many of you have Googled yourself? Raise your hand, be honest.
Oh.
Okay, if you haven't, do that. And then if you like what you see,
Go through all the images.
then a future employer will like what you see. And I'm telling you this because I do executive searches. I've hired a lot of people. And so I'm not saying that it's always a true litmus test, but people will, and once you even get into a company, there are people within the HR department that will be monitoring what you do. Okay, so if you haven't, do that and see what comes up. You might be surprised, because as you go through your job prospecting, it's different than we did that. Yes, you can call a reference, but I will tell you, references aren't necessarily reliable anymore. Who's going to put a reference on there that's not going to give them a good reference? So how it's really done now is I'll look at your references and I'll go, I know somebody that knows them, So just Google yourself and see what comes up, and start thinking about that in those terms, so that you're already starting to project the person that you want to be outside of these four walls.
And don't think just because you have privacy settings on your Facebook that people can't get around those. I know people who apply for government jobs, they'll walk in and their whole Facebook is sitting there in a stack of papers. And I was on a jury selection pool recently, and I have mine on friends only, or friends of friends, I think. So the defense attorney saw everything because they were friends with a friend of mine. So they had seen all of my Facebook and knew all about me, and they could make their determinations on which way I would fall, I guess, in a murder trial based on my Facebook. So you just have to be really careful, even if you think you're on privacy settings. Just, like Mel said, you are your own PR factory, and you can make yourself or you can break yourself. So be careful what you put on there. And I don't like LinkedIn. People do recruit on LinkedIn. There are headhunters on there. So I have received calls saying, hey, there's an opening at such and such law firm. So if you are going to have it, our firm kind of encourages us to have it. Just make sure it's very professional. It puts all of your leadership in clubs. And like Michelle said, try and stay on top of people saying congratulations. I'm very bad at that, and I need to be better at that just because I don't get on very often. So if you are going to be on it, try and be more intentional than I am.
Thank you all for joining us.
So as we get up and get ready to leave, please don't forget to fill out the evaluation.